3 soft knocks, just past midnight. I opened my hotel room door, and there she stood, the stranger I'd given my room to 4 hours earlier, wrapped in a borrowed robe, dark hair loose, her eyes swollen from crying she'd done alone. Ice ticked against the window. She wouldn't look up at me. Her arms were wrapped around herself like she might come apart. Then she said it, so quietly I almost missed it. "I can't sleep alone. Not tonight." I didn't reach for her. I gave her the bed, pulled a chair to the window, and left the lamp on until morning. Nothing happened that night, and it changed the entire course of my life. Let me back up. My name is Ben Sawyer. I'm 34 years old, and I'm a travel nurse. That means I don't really live anywhere. I take 13-week contracts in ICUs across the country, one city at a time, one hospital at a time, and I live out of a suitcase in extended-stay hotels with beige walls and paintings of boats screwed to the drywall so nobody can steal them. I've had 11 addresses in 2 years. I tell people it's for the money, and the freedom, and the adventure. The truth is, I've been running. 2 years ago, I lost my little sister. Her name was Grace. She was 26, and she got sick, and it moved fast. And for the last 4 months of her life, I was the only family she had left. Our parents were already gone. So I moved into her apartment, and I took care of her. And here's the thing I learned in those 4 months. The thing that turns out to be the whole point of my life. Grace could handle the days. It was the nights that terrified her. She'd get this look around 10 p.m. every night, and she'd say, "Ben, don't go home yet." I can't do the dark by myself. So I didn't. I slept in the chair beside her bed for 4 months with the lamp on, every single night, until the night she didn't need me to anymore. After she died, I couldn't be still. Still meant feeling it. So I started moving, contract to contract, city to city, 13 weeks at a time, and I never let anyone get close enough to matter. Because everyone who matters can be lost, and I was done losing people. I was very good at my job, and completely hollow everywhere else. That's who I was the night of the storm. A man running the whole country, so he'd never have to sit still long enough to grieve. Before I tell you how a stranger knocking on a hotel door at midnight cracked all of that open, if you believe the right person can walk into your life on the worst possible night and change everything, do me a quick favor and tap that subscribe button, because this channel is full of stories exactly like this one, and I'd hate for you to miss the next. All right, back to the storm. It was late February, and I was 3 weeks into a contract in a mid-sized city I won't bore you with. That evening an ice storm came down out of nowhere and shut the interstate in both directions, and the little chain hotel off the highway exit, the one I'd been living in for 3 weeks, turned into a lifeboat. Stranded travelers poured in off the frozen highway, and within an hour the front desk was turning people away, because there was not a single room left in a 50-mile radius. I was coming down to the lobby to find coffee when I saw her at the desk. She was maybe my age, dark hair coming loose from a clip, still in a wool coat with melting ice on the shoulders, and she was not making a scene. That's what I noticed. Everyone else stranded in that lobby was angry, loud, demanding. She was just standing very still at the counter, with her hands flat on it, and she was saying, in a voice stretched thin as wire, "Please, there has to be something. A cot, a couch, anything. I've been driving for 9 hours, and I can't get back on that road. Please." And the poor kid behind the desk kept saying he was sorry. There was nothing, and I watched this woman's composure start to come apart at the seams, quietly, the way it does when someone has already used up every bit of strength they had before they ever walked in the door. I don't fully know why I did it. Maybe because I had a room and no one waiting in it. Maybe because I know exactly what it looks like when a person is holding themselves together with their bare hands, Maybe because of Grace. I stepped up to the desk and I said, "She can have my room. 309. Put it under her name. I'll figure something out." The woman turned and looked at me like I'd spoken a language she didn't recognize. "I can't take your room," she said. "I can't do that. You've been driving too, you—" "I live here, actually," I said. 3 weeks now. Hospital contract. I've got a car in the garage and a lobby with a coffee machine. And I've slept in a lot worse than a lobby couch. It's fine, really." I slid the key card across to the clerk. "Room's hers." The clerk, bless him, leaned in and said quietly that there was actually one more space. A small room on 4. They'd been holding for a maintenance issue that had just cleared. And that if I'd taken care of this stranded woman like that, the least the hotel could do was comp it to me for the night. So I ended up in 412, 1 floor up, and before I left the lobby I turned to the woman and said, "I'm in 412 if you need anything at all. Extra blanket, whatever. Just knock." I meant it, the way you mean it, as a courtesy. I did not expect her to take me up on it. Her name, she told me at the desk, was Cora. That was all I knew about her when I said goodnight and rode the elevator up. A stranger named Cora, with ice on her coat and grief all over her face, and a room number I'd handed her without thinking twice. 4 hours later, at 11:58, she knocked. Which brings us back to the blanket and the chair, and me telling her she wasn't alone. She lay down on the bed in the borrowed robe, on top of the covers, curled up small, facing the window, and I sat in the chair 6 feet away, with the lamp on, and for a long time, neither of us said anything. I figured she'd fall asleep. She didn't. After maybe 20 minutes, into the quiet, without turning around, she said, "My father died 3 days ago." And there it was. The reason a composed woman couldn't get back on a highway, couldn't be alone in a strange dark room, couldn't stop holding herself together with her bare hands. "I'm so sorry," I said, and I meant it in a way most people don't, and I think she heard that. She told me, slowly, to the window, the way people tell hard things when they don't have to look at you. His name was Frank. He'd lived alone in a small town 6 hours from her city ever since her mother passed, and Cora had been driving to him, that's where the 9 hours came from, to arrange the funeral and start clearing out the house, because her older sister had said she was too busy to leave right away. A heart attack, sudden, no warning. He'd been fine on Sunday and gone on Monday. And this, tonight, this frozen highway, this borrowed room, was the first night since the phone call that Cora had been truly, completely alone. At home there'd been neighbors, casseroles, her sister's clipped phone calls, things to do. Out here on the road, in the dark, in a stranger's bed, it had finally caught up with her all at once. "I keep reaching for my phone to call him," she whispered. 3 days and I still reach for the phone. And then I remember. And then it happens again, an hour later. She pulled the robe tighter. I couldn't be in that room alone with it. The dark and the quiet and the reaching for the phone. "I'm so sorry to have put this on you. You're a total stranger." "I'm a nurse," I said. "You didn't put anything on me I haven't carried before." And then, because she'd given me her hardest thing, I gave her mine. I told her about Grace, about the 4 months, and the chair, and the lamp, and Ben. I can't do the dark by myself. I told her I'd sat in this exact chair 100 nights for someone I loved, and that sitting up with a person so the dark doesn't swallow them isn't a burden. It's just about the only holy thing I know how to do. Cora turned over then and looked at me across the 6 feet of hotel carpet, and something passed between us that I've never been able to name. Not romance. It was too soon and too sacred for that. It was recognition. Two people who'd each been left alone in the dark, finding out they weren't the only one. "There's a voicemail," she said suddenly. "From him, from that Saturday, 2 days before. He called, and I was in a meeting, and I didn't pick up, and he left this long, rambling voicemail, and I keep the phone on the nightstand, and I can see the little red dot, and her breath hitch. I can't listen to it, because the second I listen to it, that's the last time. That's the last new thing he'll ever say to me. After I play it, there's nothing left. So I carry it, unplayed. 3 days now. I didn't tell her to listen to it. I didn't tell her not to. I just said, you'll listen to it when you're not alone in the dark. Not before. There's no rush. He's not going anywhere. He's right there on the nightstand, whenever you're ready. And whoever's lucky enough to be next to you, when you finally press play, that'll be the right night." She started to cry then, quietly, and I did not move from the chair, and eventually, near 3 a.m, she fell asleep mid-sentence, the way exhausted, grieving people do, like someone cut a wire. I stayed awake in the chair with the lamp on until the gray light came up over the frozen parking lot, watching a stranger sleep, making sure the dark didn't get her. Same as I'd done for Grace. It was the first time in 2 years I'd felt like myself. In the morning, the roads had been salted, and the world had that scoured, blinding look it gets after an ice storm. Cora woke, mortified, and grateful in equal measure, apologizing all over again. She had a 6-hour drive and a funeral to arrange and no room in her for anything else, and I understood that completely. At the door, she stopped and looked at me and said, "I don't even know your last name." "Sawyer," I said. "Ben Sawyer." "Cora," she said. "Cora Bishop." She hesitated. "I'll never be able to explain to anyone what you did last night without it sounding like something it wasn't." "Then don't explain it to anyone," I said. "Some things you just get to keep." She left. I didn't ask for her number. It felt wrong, like billing her for the night. I watched her scrape the ice off a little gray car and drive off toward her father's funeral, and I told myself that was the whole story. A stranger, a storm, one good night. Done. My contract ended a few weeks later. I packed my suitcase, and I moved on to the next city, the next beige hotel, the next ICU, the running. I thought about Cora Bishop more than I'd admit, but she was 6 hours in one direction and I was already 3 states in another, and that's how it goes for a man who doesn't live anywhere. I figured I'd never see her again. Then she knocked a second time. It was maybe 6 weeks later, a Tuesday, in a completely different city. I opened the door of a completely different beige hotel room, expecting housekeeping, and there was Cora Bishop, out of the wool coat now, color back in her face, holding a paper bag from a diner, and looking terrified. "Okay, before you say anything," she said in a rush, "I want you to know, I'm aware that tracking down a travel nurse across state lines is objectively unhinged behavior. But there aren't that many Ben Sawyers, RN, and your agency has a very unsecure staff directory, and I've spent 6 weeks unable to stop thinking about the one person who was decent to me on the worst night of my life, and I brought you a burger because I didn't know how else to." She ran out of air. "You told me some things you just get to keep. I didn't want to keep this one. I wanted to find out if it was real." I stood in that doorway and felt 2 years of running just stop, like a train pulling into a station it hadn't planned on. "It's real," I said. "Come in. That burger's getting cold. Here's the part I need you to understand, because it matters. We did not fall into anything fast. Cora was 10 weeks out from burying her father, and I was 2 years into refusing to feel anything. And we were both smart enough to know that grief makes people reach for the nearest warm thing. So we went slow, painfully slow. We talked on the phone. She was 6 hours away. I was wherever the next contract put me. She'd call at night, the hard hours, and I'd stay on the line with her in the dark, the way I'd stayed in the chair, until she could sleep. That was our whole first month. A voice on the phone, so neither of us had to do the dark alone. And over those calls, the rest of it came out. I learned that Cora had spent her whole life being the reliable one, the one who took care of everyone, and let no one take care of her. She'd nursed her mother through her final illness years back. She'd been the one Frank called every night. She was the one who drove the 6 hours while her sister was too busy. She was so used to being the strong one that the night she'd knocked on my door in a borrowed robe had been the first time in her adult life she'd let another human being see her fall apart. "That's why I couldn't stop thinking about you," she told me. "You saw me at my absolute worst, and you didn't flinch, and you didn't want anything. Nobody's ever just stayed without wanting something back." And I told her the whole of Grace. Not the summary, the real thing. How I'd been running for 2 years. How I took contracts far from anyone so I'd never build a life that could be taken from me again. How the night I'd sat up with her was the first night in 2 years I hadn't felt like a ghost. "I don't know how to stay anywhere, Cora," I told her once, at 2 in the morning, 3 states apart. "I've forgotten how. I'm honestly not sure I'm safe to love. I leave. It's the only thing I know how to do." "You didn't leave that night," she said. "You sat in a chair till sunrise, for a woman whose last name you didn't know. I think you know how to stay just fine. I think you've just been too scared to." The voicemail was still on her phone, unplayed. 10 weeks, then 12, then more. The little red dot. She still couldn't do it, and I never pushed, because I understood better than anyone that some doors you don't open until you're ready to survive what's behind them. It was around the 4-month mark when the phone calls had turned into real visits, into something with a name we hadn't said out loud yet, that her sister found out how we met. And her sister took the most decent thing that had ever happened to Cora and turned it into a weapon. Her name was Valerie, the older sister, and Valerie had been fighting Cora over Frank's estate since the week he died. The house, the accounts, all of it. And Valerie was the kind of person who couldn't stand for anyone to have something clean and good, because it made her own life look like what it was. When she learned that Cora was seeing a man she'd met in a hotel the night of their father's death, she didn't ask a single question about what actually happened. She already had the version she wanted. She said it at a family dinner, loud enough for the aunts to hear. "You met a strange man in a hotel room the night Dad died. Are you serious, Cora? Do you have any idea how that looks? He's a drifter, with no address, who preys on grieving women. He saw a woman at her lowest, alone, vulnerable, 3 days after her father died, and he moved right in. And now he's what? In love with you? 4 months after Dad? He's after the estate, obviously. Everyone can see it but you. This is humiliating for the whole family." Every fact in it was technically true. A hotel, a grieving woman, a man with no fixed address. And every fact had been surgically stripped of the only things that made it the truth. The borrowed robe, the 6 feet of carpet, the chair, the lamp left on all night. The man who never once reached for her and never asked for a thing. Cora told me about it that night on the phone, and I could hear it working on her. The shame, the doubt, the way an ugly version of a beautiful thing can start to feel true if the right person says it with enough conviction. "Maybe she's right that it looks bad," Cora said, small. "Maybe I'm too deep in grief to see clearly. Maybe I should slow down, or—" "Cora," I said, "do you want to slow down? Or does Valerie want you to?" Silence on the line. "Because here's the only thing I'll say about it," I said, "and then I'll support whatever you decide. Valerie isn't protecting you from a predator. She's protecting the story, where she's not the daughter who was too busy to drive to her own father. You had the strength to go, and you found something good in the middle of the worst week of your life, and she can't stand that you got something clean out of it when all she got was the guilt. She's not describing me. She's describing the version of me she needs to be true so that you're as unhappy as she is. I took a breath. I'm not after an estate. I've never asked you for $1 or one thing. I sleep in hotels for a living, Cora. I have less than nothing, and I've never wanted anything from you but the sound of your voice in the dark. You know what actually happened that night. Don't let someone who wasn't in the room tell you what it was. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I know exactly what happened in that room. I was there, and so were you. And I heard her spine come back into her voice. I'm not slowing down. I'm done letting my sister narrate my life. 2 weeks later, Cora did the thing she'd been unable to do for 4 months. She called me on a Friday night and she said, I want to listen to the voicemail, but I don't want to be alone in the dark when I do it. You said whoever's next to me, when I press play, that'll be the right night. Her voice shook. Can you come? I know it's 6 hours. I know it's crazy, but I can't do this one on the phone. I need you in the chair. I drove 6 hours through the night, and I got to her apartment at 2 in the morning, and she opened the door in an oversized sweatshirt, with her eyes already wet, and it was the second time I'd seen her fall apart, and the second time I didn't flinch. We sat on her living room floor with one lamp on. She turned the overheads off, because it had to be done in the soft dark, the way the hard things are. And she put the phone between us, and she looked at me, and I said, I'm right here. You're not alone. Press play. She pressed play, and Frank Bishop's voice filled that quiet room, rough and warm and ordinary. A man leaving a Saturday voicemail with no idea it was the last thing he'd ever say to his daughter. He talked about nothing. The weather, a ball game, a neighbor's dog. And then, near the end, his voice changed, got softer, the way a father's does when he means it. Anyway, I know you're busy, sweetheart. You're always busy. You're always taking care of everybody. But I worry about you, Cora Belle. You never let anybody take care of you. Your whole life. You give and you won't let a soul give back. Promise your old man something, huh? Let somebody in. Let somebody sit with you sometime. You don't have to do all of it alone. You were never as alone as you decided you were. I love you, kid. Call me back when you get a minute. No rush. No rush. And then he was gone 2 days later, and there'd been no minute and no call back. Cora broke completely, and I held her on the living room floor while she sobbed, and I did not say a single useless comforting word, because I'd learned from Grace that you don't talk a grief smaller. You just refuse to let it be carried alone. But somewhere in it, through the tears, Cora started to laugh. This wet, astonished laugh. And she looked up at me and said, He told me. 2 days before he died, he told me to let somebody in, to let somebody sit with me. She pressed her hand to her mouth. And 2 days after he died, a stranger sat in a chair all night, so I wouldn't be alone in the dark. It's like Dad. She couldn't finish it. Like he sent the answer, before you'd even ask the question, I said. That was the night Valerie's whole ugly story turned to ash. And it wasn't even because we fought her. It was because Frank Bishop, from a voicemail his daughter had been too afraid to play, had told Cora in his own words that the most important thing she could do with the rest of her life was stop being alone and let somebody sit with her. Valerie could call me a drifter and a schemer all she wanted. She couldn't argue with a dead man's last wish for his own daughter's happiness. When the estate finally settled, Cora took her share without apology and never explained herself to her sister again. Some things you just get to keep. I stopped taking contracts far away. I took one in Cora's city, and then I didn't leave when it ended. I took the staff position they offered, the thing I'd been running from for 2 years, a job with an address and a lease, and a life that could be lost. Because I finally understood that a life you keep at arm's length so it can't be taken isn't safe. It's just empty. Grace didn't spend her last 4 months teaching me to run. She spent them teaching me to stay in the chair. Cora and I have been married a little over a year now. It was a small wedding, and Valerie came, and it wasn't warm, but it was a start, and a start is more than nothing. Frank's voicemail is still on Cora's phone. She never deleted it. Some nights, the hard ones, the ones that still come, she'll play it just to hear him say, "You were never as alone as you decided you were," and I'll be right there beside her, in the soft dark, in the chair, or now just on the other side of the bed, close enough that she never has to reach for a phone that won't answer. Because here is the only thing I actually know. The thing my sister taught me in 4 months of lamplit nights, and a stranger taught me again on a frozen highway. You can't stop the people you love from being lost. You can't fix grief, or outrun it, or talk it smaller. There's only one thing you can ever really do for another human being, and it's so simple that people spend their whole lives missing it. You don't leave them alone in the dark. She knocked on my door at midnight and whispered that she couldn't sleep alone, and I thought I was doing her a kindness by sitting up in a chair. I had it exactly backward. She wasn't the one who'd been alone in the dark for years, running from city to city, so the grief could never catch up. That was me. She knocked on my door. But she's the one who finally let the light back in. If you've ever had a stranger show up on the worst night of your life and be decent to you when they had no reason to be, or if you've ever been the one who stayed when it would have been so much easier to walk away, I want to hear about it, because I don't believe those moments are ever really accidents. Tell me your story down in the comments, and tell me where in the world you're watching from tonight. I read every single one, and it honestly stuns me how far these stories travel. Somebody wrote in last week at 3 in the morning, unable to sleep, and I hope with everything in me, they're resting easier now. And before you go, be honest with me. If a stranded stranger had knocked on your door at midnight and whispered that they couldn't be alone, would you have opened it and pulled up a chair like I did? Or would you have said you were sorry and quietly turned the lock? There's no wrong answer. There's only the one you'd have to live with at 4 in the morning. If this story touched something in you, do me one small kindness. Tap that like button so it finds the next person lying awake tonight. Hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell, because I'm here every single week with a brand new story about the kind of love that shows up in the dark, exactly when we've stopped believing anyone will. Sleep well tonight. You're not as alone as you think. I'm glad you're here.